I can't see like, this is the top 100 and, coming up next is a 64-bit, I don't know.
The future of music.
The future of music. The future of music.
The future of music.
The future of music.
The Future of Music podcast.
Hey there once again. It's time for the Future of Music podcast. I am Ryan Withrow. I look the same as last episode because we're recording it now. I'm also joined by Jonathan Boyd again, because reminder, it's the same day, but it's okay. Jonathan, my friend, it is so good to see you always. And, I'm just going to throw it to you. I'm just going to ask you, what the heck are you excited about? Because you're smiling a lot. I don't know if it's the coffee. I don't know if it's your location or if you're pumped for the topic that we have today. So what are you pumped about over there?
I think it's probably all three, and also the fact that I'm laughing and I'm wearing the same shirt, but just a different color. So anyway, today, there's a lot of buzz about AI, in the music space. We talk about it a lot. That's just because there's so much buzz about it. But I think we're going to dive deep on one question that almost everybody is asking. We get asked this all the time. And I think even people who aren't asking it are thinking about it in the back of their heads. And that is, will AI music actually make human music more valuable? Or could it make it worse? Or could it make you a lot more money from your music? We're going to dive into all that kind of stuff and probably a whole lot more silly things too.
Yeah, interesting topic. Also interesting are those of you that click subscribe and click the alerts. So just make sure you do that. And by the way, if you haven't noticed, we respond to the comments. So I've been responding to y'all. That's me. From my heart to y'all for commenting and interacting with us. And make sure you follow us on the podcast channels, just because we do this all the time and you get notified directly from them when we have new episodes coming out. So make sure you do that. But yeah, man, this is a question I've had, honestly, because turns out I play music. Turns out, what do you know? And I've always in the back of my head had this looming question that is either a positive or a negative, which is, what does it do to me as a musician? All the years of work that I have put into building calluses on the guitar and losing so much time by practicing and doing speed drills and having my wife hear literally the same exercises for the 10 years we've been married every day, probably. She could probably sing them. She's not even a good singer. I don't think she could sing them. But I've always asked myself, like, what does that look like for me? Is it going to help me in any way? Does it make me more money? Is it more desirable as we start to fill the space with AI generated stuff, or am I doomed? Am I doomed in this situation? So in research this week, I really started diving into just that. I saw a specific headline that literally made me stop scrolling as a musician. And it made me pause, made me wonder things, and just really connected with me. And it was exactly what you said. The headline was, will AI generated music make human music more valuable? And of course, it made my day, because I was hoping the answer was yes. But, we're at this point where music composition is really witnessing this transformation. And some people are really deeming that exceptional, and some people aren't thinking that that's the case. We've talked about this a lot, for sure. But the idea here that I want to bring to the table and have a conversation on is, could AI generated music actually make human music more valuable, more desirable, because it's so easy, and I'm sure that's going to be so plentiful to have the AI generated music. But that's what I want to chat on with you here, John. So for those of people, the people wondering that haven't been listening to us, that maybe they're new, welcome, by the way. Don't let us scare you away. Additionally, what the heck is this idea of AI generated music? I'm going to ask you that question. I didn't even prepare you for that, but what would you say is a good summary for people that are unfamiliar with this concept of AI generated music?
I mean, if I had to put it in one sentence, I would say computer generated music. And we've had, there's a lot to talk about there. There's a lot to unpack. We can get really, really technical about it. But when we say computer generated music, technically that's existed for a number of decades, right? But in the beginning, it's like crappy, like polyphonic Mario type sound, like all ringtones, things like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you remember that, but I mean, nobody wants to listen to that, right? So we wouldn't technically call it music, but the nowadays, so to speak, I mean, you can go to GarageBand and move some sliders around, and it will create a track for you to play along with, like drums, guitar, bass, maybe even synthesizer, and you can literally drag a slider and change the style, the tempo. It's pretty amazing what you can do. But at the end of the day, it's just computer generated music. It's just a heck of a lot more advanced. So if somebody's asking, what is AI generated music? Well, it's literally uh, computer generated music. But nowadays, the interface or how you can actually, I wouldn't say prompt, but how you can program is also the wrong word, but how you can uh, make an input, some kind of an input into a computer, whether that's through a slider interface, whether that's actually typing, however you communicate with a computer, and then it outputs sophisticated sounding, what we would actually call music that people would listen to.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I jam hard on 8-bit music, you know? I put that on every morning, go to the gym with it. Just kidding. But when we think about the comparison of computer music compared to human beings actually having their input in music and creating and composing and writing and recording and all that stuff, we have to remember the difference right now, at least, until we
Mm-hmm.
start doing some kind of brain implant with computers, which, that's not far off. But outside of that, right in this moment right now, we're too different. So we've got the computer side, and then we've got ourselves, our individual selves. And when we think about how we create music and the differences that we have versus something like a computer, at least at this point, that's the key, because there is going to be a time where these qualities that I'm about to discuss and bring to the table are going to be able to be computerized as well through
Mm-hmm.
AI technology. But you can think about us and how we're driven by creativity, and that's a human quality. Emotion is a
Mm-hmm.
really big one, right? That really drives a lot of us, and personal experiences as well. So it allows us to really write differently or come from a different style or practice of writing and creating and composing. That computers at this point, again, disclaimer, at this point, aren't really able to fulfill as much of. So we have these two sides, I guess, of the equation, which is the AI generated music, which is starting to really boom. The computers are doing great work, but they're kind of just processing a bunch of songs from the past. At this point, they're starting to view trend data and start to just analyze everything that already exists, created by humans, more than likely, and just they're doing what they think is best with their algorithms. So their thinking and their thought process is all algorithm based. But ours is very much key to emotion, personal experiences, how we want to deliver a message that
Mm-hmm.
means something to us and the listener. So, really looking at those two at this point, very different, drastically different in that way. So, I guess the conversation point that I want to bring to the table right now is when it comes to human music versus computer music, when does that transition happen? First of all, I wasn't even prepared to have this conversation, but I want to. I just want to. When do
Singularity.
you think?
That's where we're
Yeah, yeah. When do you think that singularity happens? So that you can literally give an emotion to the computer, and then what happens to us? So yeah, there you go. There's just a lot of conversation points I'm just going to throw at you with zero question. You're just going to get it. There you go.
good. I don't like questions anymore anyway. So you bring up a lot of interesting points, and one things that stuck out to me was personal experiences. So the emotional part, well, that's the only thing that drives human behavior is
Mhm.
emotion. And the music in general and historically is an expression of some type of emotion, and personal experiences can play a part in that. So let's take music that doesn't have lyrics versus music that does have lyrics. So let's say classical music, or even like a film score, like something that's in a movie that doesn't have lyrics. Well, clearly with the instrumentation, the orchestration, whatever the music is that's playing, can amplify or cause you to feel certain emotions. So, for example, I think the easiest example is in a horror movie. You're going to expect to hear scary music, right? It amplifies that feeling of being afraid, being scared, tense, etc. I think, AI generated music can already do that. It's you literally go to a website and you just type in, scary music, and then boom, it generates something that is scary. Now, how does it do that? I think if you have, I'm just going to make up a super simple example. So let's say you have 100 songs in a list that are titled or labeled scary music. If you feed that into a computer and you say, this is what scary music sounds like, call this scary music, well, it's going to find all the similarities, between all those different songs. Maybe the type of, if we want to, which we don't, go deep into music theory type stuff, the type of intervals, the type of chords, the type of melodies or whatever that are used, the tempo, all that stuff. It analyzes all that stuff and basically spits out something that fits in that average category. So it can theoretically, well, not theoretically and practically can already do that. But on the personal experience side, I want to point to two things. One is actually listening to, for some reason, I thought about it as listening to tapes. I'm not sure why, but that's what I thought about. I'll explain what I mean in a moment. And also guitar solos. So, or it can be any instrument solo, any instrument improvising, anything like that. But specifically, let's talk about guitar solos. So, first of all, tapes. Why do I say tapes? I say tapes because many of us can picture putting on a tape or a CD, or nowadays your iPod, and then now your iPhone, um, on in the car when you're driving. And we all know what it is to drive to awesome music and sing along at the top of your lungs when you're driving at night by yourself, and have those anthems that represent certain segments of your life, right? We know that. And sometimes certain songs that are written and performed, those going to be two different things. So the way it's written, what the lyric says, what the music feels like, and the way that it's performed, all of that together can touch us and move us in just a certain way because we relate to it. And country music is really good at this, right? About what what the simple life stories are that it talks about, and the simple life pains that it talks about. Whether you like country music or not, they are good at it, and a computer can't relate to that.
Mhm.
So I think one element of human music that we gravitate to so much, part of it is a feeling. So part of it is emotion. And the emotion part, I do think, until we get to guitar solos, the emotion part, a computer can do that. A computer can handle that. Um, there's another thing that we can talk about, which is the difference, the early difference between digital and analog music, and we can get there in a moment. But I just, I'm open to it. I just don't see how AI generated music could create something that communicates that relation of the human experience that another human will be moved or touched by. Can the lyrics be similar to a story like that? Yeah. Can the voice sound similar to that? Yeah, but it's actually not human, and this is where we go super deep. Talking about a soul, or the idea of having a soul, and I'll let you take that somewhere in a second. But at that point, talking about the personal experience, the human experience part, that's where I'm open to it happening, but I don't necessarily see a transition. I don't know if it will ever converge. I just don't think, it's just a different thing because it's not human. Um, that's just my current view on it. Of course, they can say next week that all AI has turned into some other superhuman life form, and all that. But yeah, it's just really interesting to ask that question. But I'll do the same thing to you. So I don't have a question for you. I'm just gonna throw it all back at you.
I think we'll just start hearing the computers come out with music about overheated motherboards. You know,
That's a
I
good band name. Overheated motherboard.
yeah. And their first track, scary song. It's
Yep.
it's it. I was sitting there the whole time going, terrible song name, scary song, scary music, scary song. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm biased. I think so. I tend to think I have a little bit of that going for me, but there is a really good case to it. I mean, it has its purpose. They all have their purpose, I guess I should say. AI generated music, I'm not somebody that's opposed at all.
Mhm.
I'm actually really excited about it because it gives me the ability to do the stuff that, I'll put it this way, doesn't require my input of emotion and personal experience.
Mhm.
So it allows me to focus more on that side. It's that boring stuff that's like, I'm writing a song, I know what key it's in, I know what chords I'm playing. I don't know what I want to write for the string part. Like, I just care about the solo that I'm writing. Like, go do that thing for me. Go do that. Okay, let me focus
Mhm.
on this part that's really exciting for me. And that's what they're saying. So what they're really
Yeah.
coming to the table with is, a lot of people are thinking there's a massive amount that it could devalue
Mhm.
human made music by flooding the market with easily created music. But there's also this other side, which we've heard of from a lot of producers, where the opposing view says that AI generated music has the potential to be used for inspiration,
Mhm.
collaboration, and enhancement in the creation of human made music. So at this point, right now, it feels like there's not going to be one or the other that really rises to the top. I think that there's still, at least for the few generations ahead, that human music is going to still be up there. I mean, I look at things like art when I consider stuff like this, actual paintings. NFTs came out. I'm sure they'll continue to rise at some point, or a variation of them.
Mhm.
But boy, did they crash as well
Yeah.
there for a minute. I just saw what Justin Bieber had one that he spent like $30 million on, and it's worth 59K now. So it's
Great
insane to
decision.
see, boom, the crash. But what do you still see? You still see throughout that entire process that the price and value of human art, that didn't have any issues. That
Yeah.
still remained the same. And I think that's a generational thing right now. At least
Mhm.
we have had that in our lives at this point. And if I had children, which I do, my dog, I'll show him music as it is. He listens to way too much Dream Theater. He has no idea what time signatures are going on, and I'm really upset about it. But he listens to music, right? Just like a child that if I had a kid, I'd be having them listen to bands like Satriani, Vi, all of these guys, and it's going to be part of that next generation. More than likely, that'll stick around, and it'll slowly taper off if we continue on this trend of AI generated music and computers making music. But in the near term, even the long term, I don't see it being anything that will overtake. I see it as something that needs to be
Mhm.
embraced because it will make our human made music way better. And that's, I think, what I want to talk about is having that open mind on, stop thinking about it as a negative, taking away stuff, and start seeing it as an
Yeah.
opportunity for yourself in music. But there you go. No question. Handing back to you
Good.
for your
I
thoughts.
like this. Let's not do any questions this time. So I think I think there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to make sure I touch on a couple of points. Well, a few different points. Um, I think humans, we tend to oversimplify things. It's like either this is really amazing or this is really horrible. Everything's going to crash and burn. But the reality is never like that. Reality is always somewhere in between, right? So I'll come back to that in a second. The first thing I want to do is address what I was going to say about guitar solos earlier. And the
Yeah.
reason I want to say that is because, to answer your non question right now, I think uh, the question about whether it has value or not isn't actually a good question. It's different forms of value, and
Mm.
it depends on what is the purpose of those different forms of value, like NFTs versus art. So I'll come back to that. But first, about guitar solos, to illustrate what I was thinking about. Why are they fundamentally different? They meaning AI generated music versus human generated music, and what can be the purpose or the function of those moving forward, and how can AI music be a tool? So maybe I should just ask your questions for me and then answer my own questions. But so the guitar solo thing. So for some reason, I'm thinking about David Gilmour, from Pink Floyd, and I'm thinking about him being in the studio, recording "Dark Side of the Moon." And you know as well as I do from being in the studio a lot. There's an old saying that usually the first or the best take is the best, and after that, you're just wasting your time. And usually, the reason for that is because you, even if you're nervous, your actual candid emotion comes through with you hearing the song as you're playing along with it. And whatever you play, even though you might not think with your brain that it's perfect, it's more emotionally pleasing, I guess, to listeners. And the first or the second take is the most natural. It's your most natural response to the music that you're hearing, that you're playing on top of. After that, you start thinking about it more and more and more and more, and then it becomes calculated. And who likes to listen to calculated music? Who likes to listen? Like, how many people out of all the music listeners listen to super calculated math rock?
Me?
A few, a few. Yeah, no, I like it too, right?
Kidding,
I like
kidding.
some of it. I like some of it. It's intellectually stimulating,
Mhm.
but it's calculated. They call it math rock for a reason. And the vast majority of people don't, they just don't get turned on by that. They don't like it.
Yeah.
So where I'm going with this, and I didn't even mean to lead into the calculation and math rock part, but it's perfect, because what I was going to say is, I mentioned earlier the difference between analog music and digital music. And as somebody just like yourself who kind of lived through the I guess the birth of digital music, and then all the arguments about whether digital is good versus analog and recorded to tape, what's the difference in the sound forms and the sound waves and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, technically, if you look at it, the waveforms in digital music are calculated. They're not an actual smooth audio wave. They are little squares,
Mhm.
and it's calculated. And if we remember in the beginning, we would always describe digital music as sterile or digital or calculated or cold or not warm, right? It's computer feeling. So that's in terms of the sound. But in terms of guitar solos, imagine David Gilmour again going in the studio. He's playing this first or second take of uh, the song Time. I think that's one of the most famous solos ever. And there's one particular high note that he hits. And if you really listen to that solo, he messes up a lot. That high note actually is kind of it's buzzing a little bit, like he's
Mhm.
hit another string or something like that. It's imperfect, right? So here's the interesting thing, and this is what I was thinking about, that if computers try to generate the same sound or even the same emotion or the same guitar solo or something similar to that theoretically would have the same emotion, it can't not be calculated. Even if they calculate all the mistakes and everything to make quote human error, it's still calculated. It
Mhm.
has to be digital. It can't possibly be real and natural and analog and coming from a person or coming from a soul. So that's why I say that they're two fundamentally different things. And I really don't know if that's ever going to converge. They're going to try to make it converge, but I don't know if how I could see it going is this. We have this conversation about, is AI music going to dominate real music? And all the people in their heads and all their conversations, they're going to think about it and try to force it to converge and try to make it get closer and closer and closer until potentially we eventually realize that, oh, it's not the same. And then when we realize it's not the same, then we realize that, oh, this music has a function and this music has a function. So human generated music, just like human generated art, there's a market for it. It's not going to go away, in my opinion, because it speaks to, it relates to the human experience, and we like it. That's why we like it. We don't
Mhm.
stop liking it. And digital music, I think, will become more specialized. And when I say more specialized, and I can't believe I'm remembering all the points that I wanted to hit, it's pretty awesome. Um, uh, so, okay, sorry, I just forgot.
Forgot
I
it.
hope that's, yeah, yeah. What was I talking about? What was I talking about? Functions,
You were
different functions. Got it, got it,
yeah.
got it, got it. All right, yeah. So AI generated music, right? We talk a lot about big companies like Meta, TikTok, et cetera, getting into the AI generated music game. What's the point of that? What's the function of that, right? And we talk about how they can use it potentially for movie scenes, or they can use it for creators to give them background music that they don't have to pay out royalties or something like that. Is it good enough in that context? Yeah, because nobody's going to take an ad that they see on TikTok and go put it in their car and listen to it as they're driving down the street. You know what I'm saying? That's
Mhm.
just not the point of it. It's just different. So I can see how all the AI generated stuff can get close, and but I think it will be used as for a specific function. And this is the last point that I want to hit: is it's a tool. It's not going to replace anything. It's just going to assist. It's not going to replace. It's going to assist. So they say, I don't know how these podcasts end up getting. I get more and more philosophical and political, which I don't even try to do it, but it just happens. So they say guns don't kill people, people kill people. And that is fundamentally true. A person has to do something, like a hammer, for example. A hammer doesn't kill anyone. unless a person grabs a hammer and kills someone with it. But the point is, a hammer is just a tool. It doesn't do anything unless it's controlled by a third party, in this case, a human. And I think AI music is exactly the same thing. It's a tool. And if you use those tools to assist, like we talked about on a previous episode about producers are excited about this because it makes their job a lot easier. It's a assistance. It helps them do their jobs a lot better, a lot more efficiently, a lot faster, right? And potentially getting better results, which is what we're going to talk about here in a second to answer the big question.
Mhm.
But I think, to sum all that up, they're two fundamentally different things. I think the general society and everyone who's caught up in the hype about AI and stuff, I don't think we've quite reached the point where we realize that yet very clearly. But there obviously will always be some overlap, right? I'm not saying that it's going to be completely separate, but I think in the end, different tools are going to have their different purpose, and that's going to become clear. So there's going to still be the market for human generated music, aka music, and there's going to be the quote marketplace for AI type tools and things like that. And will actual AI music and AI bands or whatever take off? Sure, I'm sure they will. But again, it's still a tool because somebody is controlling the AI band to make money on YouTube or whatever it is, right? So yeah, no question. I'm going to throw it back to you. No questions this time.
Yeah. The conversations will be like, dude, you just hear that new drop from Windows XP? Dude, it's so good. But I think the question, as I'm looking at it on my screen, literally right now, of will AI generated music make human music more valuable? I think you, in my mind, with your explanation, changed it a bit for me. The
Oh yeah.
question, I guess the statement that we should turn the question into is it allows humans to use more of their value. So understanding that, we kind of talked about it in the creative process, but as a tool, now we have to embrace the fact that we can do the one or two things that we really are just stellar at doing,
Hmm.
and just let this do the other stuff. It allows us to really hone in as actual musicians, human musicians,
Yeah.
on the value we can bring to a song. So instead of thinking of, yeah, but my stuff, will it be more valuable or less valuable? Reframe and realize that with both together, you can potentially create stuff that focuses on your personal value, not monetary, but what you're able to do as a human being, as an individual musician, and you're able to bring to the table to a composition. And also, I would like to really break some hearts right now and tell
Good.
people that they've been using a form of AI generated stuff for years. If you play in a DAW and you use VST instruments and plugins, you've been making computer music with your music. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm guilty of this as well. Okay. I have amp simulators. My amps are gone. So is that really me making that wonderful tone and recording that tone? No, I'm sorry, but I like it. It's nice. It's a tool though. Exactly what you said.
Cool. Yeah.
It's a tool for me. The fact that I have an arpeggiator and I could just push one chord and it does the sequence for me on the computer. What do you know? This theme may have been written with that. Our actual theme for a future of music. I might have just boom, hit a chord and it played the arpeggio for me. There are these small little things that we've been doing for years already. It just hasn't progressed as quickly and as big as it is now to where it's a thing. Like it's, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, like AI generated music. You've been using a form of it for a long time and you've embraced that. So it's like, imagine going from year one of you doing that to we just multiplied that times 10,000 because we were able to with technology, and you kind of have to embrace it. But that's where I'm at. It's no longer answering the question. It's putting it out as a statement saying that it allows you to focus on what you're valuable in.
So I think that's a really good angle to think about it from. But now let's actually go to the original question. Will AI generated music make human music valuable? My answer is it can, and I think it will. I also think it can make it less valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there's always so many nuances. And again, here I go getting philosophical again. But if you if you ask the question, it depends on who you're asking it to and what their goals are. A producer, for example, will AI generated music make human music more valuable? Well, what does more valuable mean to them? Maybe that means, they can charge more for their work and get more work done in less hours, or
Mhm.
something like that. So, technically, is that more valuable then? Yes. What about an artist? What about somebody who's not an artist? And I said this earlier, who generates a band called Gorillaz 2. And it's a Gorillaz knockoff band that kind of sounds like the Gorillaz, but maybe this person just like threw in a bunch of Gorillaz songs and say, hey, make me something that sounds similar to this, but not quite the same so I can avoid copyright issues. And then click the button and then out pop the songs. Is that more valuable for him? Yeah, it makes it more valuable.
I prefer the
That's not.
name. I prefer the name More Gorillas
I like
over
more
Gorillas
gorilla.
too.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
is it MOAR gorillas? All caps. More gorillas.
I
You
think
like
so.
that?
I think so.
Okay, good. Now we're settled. All right. Yeah, but human music, right? So the question is, does AI music make human music more valuable? And here's something that we haven't touched on yet. So for some reason, Bono popped in my mind. I don't know why, Bono from U2, but I imagine him, them writing a new song. And previously, assuming that we haven't been using AI tools for the last 10, 20 years, which we actually have, but now we're talking about it more out in the open and like directly using them for songwriting and things
Mhm.
like that. So we know that there are certain musical ideas that tickle the human ears. So, for example, the chord progression like 1 5 6 4 or 1 6, whatever it is, whatever the most popular one is something like that. How many songs has that been used in? Like literally, probably billions of songs. And for
Yeah.
some reason, we just like that movement, right? We like that chord movement. So imagine if you get a group of 4 or 5 guys in a room and they're a band in a studio and they're trying to come up with songs. They may come up with some great songs, with a producer or something like that. And that's been history so far. The songs have obviously progressively gotten a heck of a lot worse, over the last couple of decades. Uh, but just imagine the additional. We used the word assistant earlier and tool, right? So if AI can help you generate better sounding, or let's just call it better tickling musical ideas that somehow end up in a better song that maybe the humans can perform and record, or even if some of it's AI generated, who cares? But the song itself, the output of using those AI tools can actually result in a better song that more people would want to listen to or want to listen to more times. Therefore, I do think it will make human music more valuable in that sense.
I'd agree. I think that the big question that most people are viewing this as is like monetarily, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
will it make human music more money? Will it be worth more monetarily? And with that, I don't know that there's an answer. I think I
I
lean
think it will.
toward yeah, I think that I lean toward again, we kind of brought back the simplicity of art, right? That whole concept of it's still selling, it sells for a lot of money and it continues to gain value throughout the years. And it's just something that'll never go away. So I do think it will make it more valuable, but it depends on how big we take this AI generated music focus, which at this point it looks like to the moon and beyond that we're going to go to. But what does that mean? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's a philosophical question that I could go either way on. I can't answer either way. I really can't.
Well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm just kidding. No, but really, think about this: art. We keep going back to the idea of human generated art, aka the most typical form of art that I think any of us think of as a painting, right? The
Mhm.
Mona Lisa, for example. Well, let's imagine that you lived in a time where there was a canvas and there was oil paint, but the paintbrush hadn't been invented yet. And then somebody comes along and invents a paintbrush, and then it's a whole controversy. And then everybody's like, oh my God, the headline comes out in the old historical paper that existed before paintbrushes that says, will paintbrushes make human art more valuable? And of course it does, because
Mhm.
it's a tool that assists the artist. And I
Yep.
think, I'm sorry, I'm not going to drop this mic because it is kind of expensive. But if I had to drop the mic, I would drop it right there and say that I think that's my answer to all of this, is that yes, of course it will make human music more valuable because it's a tool that assists them in making it more valuable. That's it.
Interesting. I like it because most people, including myself, brought this to the table with a question with two opposing forces.
Yeah.
So, when I bring the question of you're either in this bracket of AI generated music or you're over here on this side with human music, what do you think? And it just sitting back and thinking of it as a reframe, same question.
Hmm.
But will AI generated music make human music more valuable? It makes sense that they're one. So many people are coming from this headline of opposing views rather than thinking of it as one collective piece that can be in the same thing and grow and make it more valuable. So on that side, I would agree. I would absolutely agree. On the opposing sides of will it like devalue human music because so many people are jamming to Windows 95. No, I don't think that's you're going to see a major issue where the computers are taking over because, man, they write some hits. I can't see this is the top 100 and, coming up next is a 64-bit, I don't know. But I don't see that. I really don't.
I don't know. I could see it actually. I could actually see it. I don't think, I mean, when things change, things change. And what I mean is, when something new comes along, the existing system has to change to adapt to the new thing. So we have an idea of the top hits, right? The Billboard charts. Well, that's historically been bands and artists who are humans who generate music. Now, if we're going to have this competitor, basically AI generated music, well, if we think about the masses who listen to music, they listen to the most formulaic garbage crap ever out there that's all on every radio station ever, right? Why do they listen to that? Because it's proven formula, literally, to tickle the ears, to sound pleasing for the average person who doesn't have a reading level above fourth grade in terms of music. I'm saying like their musical reading level or their level of not actually physically reading music, but listening to music and understanding what's
Sure.
going on and being able to appreciate that. So I think that if we think about it in that context, then of course there's going to be new songs that are hits because they're formulated to be hits,
Yeah.
and they can be even way better uh, than what humans can come up with now. And that still corroborates. There's a 75-cent word for you. My previous statement about how it's a tool that is going to assist people to write better songs or whatever it is. But I also think that let's just assume an AI bot, if you will, and it can read all of the top 40 Billboard charts hits ever and listen to every single song and pull out all the similarities. What if it just starts pumping out like the average of all of those songs? Some of them are going to be hits. Some of them are going to be like, dude, somebody's going to call you or send you a text like, dude, did you hear the song yet? I'm just jamming out to this thing, blah, blah, blah. They don't care who the artist is. It comes on the radio. They don't know the difference. So I think it will actually.
And I'll leave us with this open loop that we'll have to come back on and have some conversations about this idea that as you're talking, I'm feeling it. And how much of an impact does it have to know the artist for whether you have a hit as well? So,
Mm,
example, Ed Sheeran fans, they
yeah,
love the guy. And
true.
every time he comes out with a new hit, what's the weight of that? Is it because they
Hmm.
know he wrote it and they love him and they love what he's done and they'll follow him everywhere? Do we lose that element? And is that a necessary element to have something lead the charts and for people to be sharing? Which leads me to my secondary question that we'll do an entire episode about, which is what happens when something like AI generated music becomes aware? Does it start mimicking and presenting itself as a band, as a person, because it knows our relationship to that is going to be much more effective? In other words, instead of saying, hey, this is my new AI generated song, it's like, hi, I am Ryan Withrow. Great to see you. There's a complexity to that, which is interesting to me to think about. What is the value in terms of what I'm listening to? How much do I need to know it was a person emotionally for me to connect to that, to hear it, to feel it, to want to have the desire to go in the car and pull up that album
Hmm.
versus anything else? It'll be interesting to see it play out. So I'll just leave that there. as like open loop for our next conversation, because the idea of this technology trying to grow itself and get into leadership in the space of music and beat us in the game is a very interesting topic for us to have an entire
Sure is.
2-day podcast on.
Full 48 hours.
Yeah, it'll be a marathon one.
Good.
We'll just have to have music for potty breaks and for eating food. We'll just eat food live. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll turn the
Just do it
mics
live.
off, but it's good. But this was fun. I love this stuff. I love having these conversations, and we hope y'all start some conversations in the comments section. But before you do that, you make sure you subscribe. So I had to do it. I had to put it in there somewhere. I tried to segue as best I could, and that was the one I chose. So make sure you do that, and we'd love to hear your input. We're going to pose the question to y'all, which is, what do you think? Do you think AI generated music will make human music more valuable, and why? We'd love to see you and interact with you there, and we'd love to see you all interact with each other and hear your points and take it from there. But John, I always have a good time with you. I feel like half the time we could just keep going, and before we know it, we would have like a 9-hour podcast episode, which, might be great for us, but we need to make sure that they get their time back as well. So speaking of time, we will see you all here soon. So make sure you keep up to date with us. We appreciate you all for watching and for listening and for being here. And we'll see you next time on the Future of Music podcast.
See you later.